watching DD India and I'm Preeti presenting this edition of News on the Hour, a program which we get for you every morning to make sure you keep yourself abreast with everything that's making it to the headlines. We'll get you national updates, international updates, updates from the world of business, sports, enough to keep you engaged for the next 1 hour. First, the top stories. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to chair the 13th BRICS Summit today. The theme under India's chairship is BRICS at 15, intra-BRICS cooperation for continuity, consolidation and consensus. India had outlined 4 priority areas for its chairship. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh along with Union Road and Transport and Highways Minister Nitin Gadkari to inaugurate the emergency landing facility on NH 925A near Barmer in Rajasthan today. Move to strengthen the Indian Army and security network on the western international border of the country. In a landmark achievement, India's COVID-19 vaccination coverage has crossed 71 crore milestone. Over 86.51 lakh doses administered yesterday. India reports 43,263 new COVID cases in the last 24 hours. Minister of State for External Affairs Meenakshi Lekhi meets President-elect of 76th UNGA Abdullah Shahid in New York. Discusses COVID vaccines, gender, youth, human rights and environment for the session. Horrific boat accident at Brahmaputra River in Assam. 7 people missing, 1 dead, 82 people rescued so far. Prime Minister takes stock of the situation, expresses grief, speaks to Chief Minister of Assam. Relief and rescue work continues. Mexico witnesses a series of strong aftershocks after a powerful earthquake that killed 1 on Tuesday. Shaken residents slept in cars and on streets. Another incident claims 17 patients' lives after heavy rainfall caused flooding at a hospital in central Hidalgo state in Mexico. Army deployed to provide assistance to rescue teams dealing with the disaster. In sports, India announces squad for ICC Men's T20 World Cup. Star-off spinner R. Ashwin makes a return to the white ball cricket format. Former Indian captain MS Dhoni to mentor the team. And Hartalika Teej is being celebrated by women across the country today. The festival dedicated to Lord Shiva and his consort Parvati is mainly meant for praying for marital bliss and companionship. All right, those are the top stories. Let's get to the news in detail. We begin with the national headlines first. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will today chair the 13th BRICS Summit. Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa grouping is 15 years old. The summit will be in a virtual format and the theme under India's chairship is BRICS at 15, intra-BRICS cooperation for continuity, consolidation and consensus. India had outlined 4 priority areas for its chairship. Now these are reform of the multilateral system, counter-terrorism, using digital and technological tools for achieving sustainable development goals and also enhancing people-to-people exchanges. This and more in this report.
The 13th BRICS Summit under the chairmanship of India will take place on 9th September. This is the 3rd time that India will be hosting the BRICS Summit after 2012 and 2016. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will chair the 13th BRICS Summit on Thursday in virtual format. As part of India's ongoing chairship of the 5-nation grouping this year, the meeting will be attended by Russian President Vladimir Putin, Chinese President Xi Jinping, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and Brazil's Jair Bolsonaro. The summit is expected to focus extensively on the situation in Afghanistan. BRICS is an important grouping bringing together the major emerging economies from the world, comprising 41% of the world population, having 24% of the world GDP. The theme chosen by India for its BRICS chairship is BRICS at 15, intra-BRICS cooperation for continuity, consolidation and consensus. During the year, India has successfully conducted activities including the 2nd edition of the BRICS Trade Fair, a unique event by India amongst the BRICS countries. wherein more than 600 companies from BRICS countries showcased their products and services. As chair, India will work on specific deliverables across all three pillars of intra-BRICS cooperation in 2021. Priorities include reform of the multilateral system, counter-terrorism cooperation, enhancing people-to-people exchanges, digital and technological tools for attainment of sustainable development goals. The three main pillars of BRICS include political and security, to enhance cooperation and dialogue on issues of global and regional security, developments in the global political space for peace, security and prosperity, economic and financial, to promote economic growth and development for mutual prosperity through the expansion of intra-BRICS cooperation, culture and people-to-people, recognizing the advantages of using technological and digital solutions to qualitatively enrich and enhance intra-BRICS people-to-people contacts. The 13th BRICS Summit under the chairmanship of India coincides with the 15th anniversary of BRICS as reflected in the theme for the summit. In addition to these, the leaders will also exchange views on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and other current global and regional issues. Bureau Report, DD India.
And Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and Road Transport and Highways Minister Nitin Gadkari will today inaugurate an emergency landing field at Gandhav Bhakasar section on National Highway 925 in Rajasthan's Barmer for Indian Air Force. This is the first time that a national highway will be used as an emergency landing field for an IF aircraft. The ministers will also witness aircraft operations on emergency landing field. The National Highways Authority of India had developed a 3-kilometer section of the Satta Gandhav stretch of NH 925A as an emergency landing field for the Indian Air Force. The stretch located in the western border areas will assist the vigilance of the Indian Army as well as strengthen infrastructure of the country. This facility is part of newly developed 2-lane paved shoulder of Gagaria, Bhakasar and Satta Gandhav section, having a total length of 196.97 kilometers and costing 765.52 crore rupees under the Bharatmala Pariyojana. Apart from the emergency landing strip, 3 helipads have also been constructed in Kundanpura, Singhania and Bhakasar villages in this project, according to the requirements of the Indian Air Force and Indian Army, which will be the basis for strengthening the Indian Army and security network on the western international border of the country. And Vishal Baristo is joining us to get us more on that. Vishal, good morning. We've given a brief outline of the program ahead. Talk more about it in simple layman's terms. Explain to our viewers how important will this facility be and how far it will further strengthen the security scenario on the western borders of the country.
Well, a very good morning to you, Preeti. As you already informed our viewers that this is going to be the first national highway that will have this emergency landing field. Let me inform our viewers that it was in 2017 that fighter aircrafts were landed on the Lucknow Expressway, but that was not the national highway. And this is one of the 12 national highways that are lined up for this kind of project. The western sector has always been very important for the country, and keeping in mind what's happening on the western front, especially in Afghanistan, this would be the historic day as far as the military history of India is concerned, because it would give a strategic edge not only to Indian Air Force but also into Indian Army. And as you informed our viewers that 3 helipads are also being constructed in the nearby areas. Nal is the airbase of Indian Air Force, which is also in Barmer, but this kind of facility would give an added advantage to our armed forces. Not only that, but because it would also be strengthening the infrastructure on the western front, this highway would also be used especially for the fast movement in the border areas, which connects Barmer and Jalore. These are the 2 districts that shares their borders with Pakistan. So this is going to be a very, very crucial day, and both the ministers would be witnessing the landing of the aircraft, and not only landing of the aircraft, but also operations of Indian Air Force and Indian Army. So this day would also give a clear message to our enemies across the borders that the armed forces of the country and the government in Delhi are prepared for any eventualities, so they dare not step over our borders or try any nefarious designs on India.
All right, Vishal, thank you so much for joining in. We'll come back to you again once the program begins. So that was our correspondent Vishal Baristo telling us more about how important this program is. And we'll keep you updated. The program will begin around 11 a.m. and we'll keep you updated. Up next, we'll quickly get you an update on the COVID situation across the country. When we talk of the situation, when we talk of the figures, then the fight against the pandemic is being continued. And we are at a very decisive stage in the fight against the pandemic. When we talk of the last 24 hours, then 43,263 new COVID cases were reported in the country. An active caseload stands at 3,93,614. And the active cases account to 1.19% of the total cases. Weekly positivity rate remains below 3% for the last 76 days and is now at 2.43%. Daily positivity rate remains less than 3% for the last 10 days and is currently at 2.38%. Testing is continuing in full pace in the country. In the last 24 hours, 18,17,639 samples were tested, and also total of 53,68,17,243 samples have been tested across the country. So far, 70.63 crore doses have been provided to states and union territories, and more than 96 lakh doses are in the pipeline. More than 5.58 crore balance and unutilized COVID vaccine doses are still available with the states and union territories to be administered. Also in a landmark achievement, India's COVID-19 vaccination coverage has crossed 71 crore mark. Over 71.65 crore vaccine doses have been administered so far under the nationwide vaccination drive, out of which 86,51,701 vaccine doses have been administered in the last 24 hours. Minister of State for External Affairs Meenakshi Lekhi today met President-elect of the 76th UNGA, Abdullah Shahid, in New York. Both the leaders discussed the vision and presidency of hope for the session, including COVID-19 vaccines, gender, youth, human rights and environment. During the meeting, Abdullah Shahid said that India is a champion of multilateralism and expressed confidence of India's support to the presidency of hope. And back home in Majuli Jorhat boat capsize incident of Assam, preliminary reports of state government said that 82 persons have survived the boat tragedy near Nemati Ghat in Jorhat. The report said that Jorhat-bound boat collided with Majuli-bound boat at around 4 p.m. on Wednesday. The Majuli-bound boat immediately capsized with passengers on board. The report includes death of one person from Guwahati, while 7 others were shown as missing till last evening. Meanwhile, the capsized boat has been located at a distance of about 1.5 kilometers away from the place of incident and no dead body has been recovered. 8 persons are currently being treated at Jorhat Medical College and Hospital. President Ramnath Kovind, Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressed grief and prayed for the safe rescue of the missing persons. Prime Minister Modi spoke to Assam Chief Minister and also inquired about the progress of the rescue operations at Nemati Ghat and the conditions of those injured. Mridu Smita is joining us to get us more on that. Mridu Smita, spell out more updates on the incident. We tell our viewers that 82 persons have survived the boat tragedy and that the boat which capsized has been recovered. You tell us more details.
Yes, as per the updated reports, the 7 people that were missing the rescue operations are still on. And so far, as you said, yes, 82 people were there that are alive and they have been already rescued. 42 were from Majuli bound boat and 40 people were from the Nemati Ghat bound boat. So basically, currently the rescue operations are still on and SDRF and NDRF people are still trying to find bodies or the missing people which had which are being missing since yesterday. And the administration, the government have given strict orders that strict inquiry should be, done towards the people who might be, because of which the collide had happened, and because because of the safety measures that should be used in the boats, and like life gears, or every possible safety measures that should be taken, if that were not followed, because of which the incident had happened. And the Chief Minister of Assam, he is on his way to the place, and he will be visiting the place soon. And three ministers from the cabinet, Assam cabinet, have already visited the site yesterday, and they have again asserted that every possible need, every possible assistance will be given to the administration, and the whatever help they need to rescue the people, more people from there will be taken care of. And as this incident took place, the tragic incident, because of which it happened, because since last, as the flood water had been there since past few days, the services, the ferry services were shut down, because maybe so that such kind of incidents would not occur. But as per the reports, like day before yesterday only, the ferry services were again resumed, and yesterday this tragic incident happened. And yes, we can say that because of such incident, people should be more cautious while traveling, yes, during the flood. Yes, during the flood time. Though the Majuli district, it doesn't have any other source of reaching the district or even reaching the a particular place, because they have to they have to cross the river Brahmaputra. And as I have already reported earlier, due to the flood, that Nimati Ghat is a very crucial area where usually the Brahmaputra river is always over the danger level mark during the flood time. So it is really very crucial that such incident have happened. And yes, people are still not able to come up with the incident, because the tragic the visuals are very difficult to keep on watching, because people were shouting around for help, and there were no in the boats. Basically, there were no life jackets or any safety measures that should be taken in a boat. So such inquiries should be done, and yes, people who are behind this, who have not been so cautious about such things, should be taken care of.
All right, Mridhu Smita, thank you so much for joining in with those inputs. That was our correspondent Mridhu Smita telling us more about the current updates with regard to the boat capsized incident in Brahmaputra River in Assam. We'll keep you updated. Up next, we'll get you an update on the Bihar flood situation. When we talk of the situation in Bihar, then population of over 15 lakh in 1,270 villages of 13 districts remains flood affected. The situation remains grim in Saharsa, Samastipur and Purnia, where many houses have been washed away in the heavy flow of Kosi, Buri Gandak, Parman and other rivers. The soil erosion has increased as the rivers are receding. 6 teams of NDRF and 9 teams of SDRF are engaged in relief work. 496 people are still living in 5 shelter homes. Over 14 lakh people are being given 2 square meals through 251 community kitchens. Over 1,700 boats have been deployed in the flood affected areas for the purpose of transportation and reaching the relief to the affected population. And India's first ever elevated cross taxiway at Delhi Airport is scheduled to be ready by December 2022. The 2.1 kilometers long dual elevated Eastern Cross taxiways will help decongest the airport and also improve circulation paths of aircrafts and reduce approximately 55,000 tons of CO2 emission annually. The ECT will reduce the taxiing distance to just 2 kilometers, helping the airlines to save approximately 350 kgs of fuel every time an aircraft uses the taxiing route, reducing nearly 1,114 kilograms of CO2 emissions for each aircraft. MD of GMR Group, IP Rao, said that GMR Airport is always striving to implement environment-friendly measures, and the runway is a step ahead in that direction.
We are constructing a dual eastern cross taxiway, which is first of its kind in India, will have substantial impact on carbon emission reduction by way of reduction of 55,000 tons annually. This construction is not only helping environmental friendly and also give good passenger experience. How is giving experience by way of reduction traveling time in the aircraft from runway to apron, apron to runway. Thereby you can able to reduce the time.
Swachh Sarvekshan Gramin 2021 will be launched today under Swachh Bharat Mission Phase 2. As part of the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, Swachh Sarvekshan Gramin aims to support acceleration of open defecation free plus interventions and results in the country. As part of Swachh Sarvekshan Gramin, over 17,000 villages in around 700 districts across the country will be covered. Over 87,000 public places, including schools, Anganwadis and public health centers in these villages will be visited for survey. Around 1,74,000 households will be interviewed for their feedback on Swachh Bharat Mission related issues. Also, citizens will be mobilized to provide feedback on sanitation related issues online using an application developed for the purpose. And up next, we're heading for a short break. You're watching News on the Hour. Stay with us.
With the world's largest COVID vaccination drive, India is leading the way as the vaccine reaches every corner of the nation. Do not forget the mantra, Dawai bhi, Kadai bhi. Let's continue our fight against COVID-19. Vaccination along with social distancing, sanitization and masks.
Mask up, India!
Put your mask on and cover your nose and be safe.
Mask Up India.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching News on the Hour. Let's get to international updates now. In Mexico, shaken residents slept in cars and on the streets of beach resort town of Acapulco on Wednesday as a series of strong earthquakes and aftershocks rippled through the city after a powerful earthquake killed one person. Mexico's National Seismological Service reported nearly 100 aftershocks, including one that measured 5.2. Meanwhile, it was back to life as usual for the residents in Mexico City. They said that they felt more prepared to deal with earthquakes, but most were still shocked. The 7.0 magnitude earthquake hit 17.7 kilometers northeast of Acapulco late on Tuesday. It damaged the control tower at the Beach Resorts International Airport, cracked walls in a hospital attending COVID patients, and triggered landslides and gas leaks. Acapulco is roughly 370 kilometers from Mexico City. A massive earthquake that struck the Mexican capital in 1985 killed thousands of people. Southern and central Mexico is frequently hit by earthquakes. And in more updates from Mexico, the country is witnessing severe flooding, which has led to the death of 17 people, most of whom had COVID-19 at a hospital in the central Mexican state of Hidalgo. According to the weathermen, torrential rains caused River Tula to burst its banks. The Mexican government said in a statement more than 40 other patients in the public hospital in the town of Tula were evacuated by emergency service workers, and an initial assessment showed about 2,000 houses had flood damaged. The media said that the deaths occurred when flooding caused by days of rain knocked out electricity at the hospital. Mexican president has urged residents at risk to seek out shelters, areas of higher ground, or to go to friends or relatives. In Japan, the Shikoku region has been hit hard by heavy torrential rains. Weather officials have stated that heavy downpour are hitting parts of Shikoku region in western Japan. The Met agency further said that the developed rain clouds are likely to continue to hang over parts of the region due to warm and moist air. A river in Tokushima prefecture has reached flood warning levels, and also the developed rain clouds have also been observed in parts of Chugoku region in western Japan. The agency is urging people to stay on alert for mudslides, flooding in low-lying areas and also swollen rivers. It also warned of possible lightning strikes, tornadoes and also gusty winds. Moving on, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas held a productive ministerial meeting on Afghanistan with more than 20 allies and partners. In attendance were representatives of India, United Kingdom, European Union, NATO and the United Nations, besides others. Secretary Blinken urged strong unity in making clear we will expect Taliban to live up to their public commitments, including on inclusivity, safe passage, human rights and combating terrorism. Speaking on evacuation, Blinken said that the United States was doing everything in its power to get the flights off the ground, but the Taliban was not permitting the flights to depart.
As of now, the Taliban are not permitting the charter flights to depart. The bottom line is this: those flights need to be able to depart. And we will work every day to make sure that they're able to do that. We will continue to press the Taliban to allow the charters to leave, and also, critically, to open HKIA, the Hamid Karzai International Airport, to the regular flow of civilian aircraft, which can enable the safe and orderly departure of people from Afghanistan.
Blinken also expressed concern about the lack of inclusivity in the new Taliban government, saying any legitimacy and support for interim administration should be earned. Germany too echoed similar sentiments, saying news out of Afghanistan does not make us optimistic.
The Taliban named a new interim government. We're assessing the announcement, but despite professing that a new government would be inclusive, the announced list of names consists exclusively of individuals who are members of the Taliban or their close associates, and no women. We're also concerned by the affiliations and track records of some of those individuals. We understand the Taliban has presented this as a caretaker cabinet. We will judge it and them by its actions.
Yesterday's news out of Afghanistan does not make us optimistic. A transitional government that does not include other groups is not the signal for more international cooperation and stability in the country. We hope that further government formation steps will send the necessary signals.
Nearly 2 weeks, the Kabul Airport bombing that killed 13 Americans, the remains of 2 U.S. servicemen killed in the attack have arrived in their hometowns. The suicide bombing took place on 26th of August, just outside the gates of Kabul Airport, where thousands of people had gathered to try to get a flight out after the Taliban returned to power in Afghanistan on 15th of August. Naval medic Maxton Soviak and Marine Lance Corporal Jard Smits were posthumously awarded Purple Hearts for their service, along with the 11 other service members killed in the attack. The chief of the European Union Border Agency has said that the European Union is preparing for an influx of Afghans seeking asylum, whether or not people flee en masse from the new Taliban government. He said that the body was preparing for a possible surge, both through traditional routes and new routes.
Well, depending on what's going on in Afghanistan, of course, people in need of international protection might try to flee from Afghanistan. But what will very likely happen first is that the Afghan communities living abroad might try to move to the European Union because in some places, for economic reasons, well, they are not completely pleased with the situation they have.
Afghanistan's first female ambassador to the United States, Roya Rahmani, who left her post in July, is horrified by the Taliban takeover of her country. She also accused the former US-backed government in Kabul of a failure to lead the country and of widespread corruption that ultimately paved the way for the Taliban's victory last month. She even warned the US that the rise of the Taliban would have far-reaching geopolitical consequences.
I, as an Afghan, was not surprised by the fact that the Taliban took over Afghanistan the way they did and how quickly they did, partly because of the lack of leadership by the Afghan government that was in place at the time. It was not the Afghan forces that they were not willing to fight for their freedom and for protection of their people. It was the leadership that was corrupt. And they handed over basically the country to the Taliban, and their actions led to that, to the consequences that we are seeing at this point. A lot of people are just trying to find a way to get out of the country, but the question in my mind is, as we are just rolling back everything that we achieved in the past 20 years, and it was a lot, it was not something small, then what are we leaving behind? What is going to happen to all the people that are going to be left behind?
Meanwhile, Afghan students have started returning to university classrooms, but they say that they are confused by the changes made to the educational system after the Taliban takeover. In some educational institutions, females have been separated from their male peers by curtains or boards positioned in the middle of the classroom. Here's what students and teachers have to say.
The changes in the educational system are not clear yet, but the Ministry of Higher Education has given some instructions to both state and private universities to implement them. So, we are trying our best to accept these new instructions from the Ministry of Higher Education and also encourage students to attend their classes.
Within this new policy, boys and girls will be separated and they might even attend classes at different times. Our classes will officially start next Wednesday. With the new restrictions, they are trying to take us back to previous decades because they brought many restrictions that only apply to girls.
And in more news from Afghanistan, according to media reports, the last member of Afghanistan's Jewish community has left the country. Zebulon Sementov, who lived in a dilapidated synagogue in Kabul, kept kosher and prayed in Hebrew, endured decades of war as the country's centuries-old Jewish community rapidly dwindled. But the Taliban takeover last month seems to have been the last straw. As per media report, Sementov joined an exodus of tens of thousands of Afghans who have fled since the Taliban swept across the country last month. All right, to talk more about it, our correspondent Amritpal Singh is joining us. Amrit, talk more about what do you understand of the current situation in Afghanistan. We've shown our viewers how students have got back to the university classrooms, but at the same time the international community is still saying that there is a lack of confidence and that the Taliban will have to earn the confidence through its deeds. Talk more about the current situation.
I think Anthony Blinken's statement is very telling, Priti, where he says that the recent appointments in the Afghan government do not inspire confidence. And the fact is that though they've appointed Abdul Salam Hanafi as the second deputy to or as the deputy prime minister, he is an ethnic Uzbek. But if you look at the overall composition of the Afghan government, there is hardly representation of the minorities. The inclusive or the representative government that the Taliban talked about doesn't seem to show much. There are only 3 Uzbeks and Tajiks in that. Virtually no Hazaras, no women in the cabinet, though the Taliban had made it clear that they do not see women playing a role in important positions in the cabinet or in the government, except at lower levels in some restricted sectors like education and health. Now, this is something which the world had been voicing, and Taliban's actions on the ground have reiterated that. Now, you put out the story about the last Jew leaving Afghanistan. This is symptomatic of the reality that the minorities feel in Afghanistan. The huge rush that you saw at the Hamid Karzai International Airport in Kabul, where Afghans were trying to flee Afghanistan in the days when the Americans were withdrawing and the Taliban were coming into power. It shows their fears of reprisals, of not being given equal opportunities, of not being treated as equal citizens. Hazaras have been at the, they've borne the brunt of reprisals. In the last Taliban regime, we saw public beheadings, stonings to death. Remember that Kabul soccer stadium where public stoning to death used to take place of women, of minorities, especially Hazaras. Killing of the Hazaras recently, 9 Hazara minors, or the bombing of the Hazara girls' school in Kabul are symptomatic of that. And those fears loom large as to what will happen. Though there is hardly any, the news coming in from Panjshir is very, very less, because they do not allow, the situation does not allow journalists to move around freely. But the fact of the matter is the kind of house-to-house searches that we saw when the Taliban was taking over in Kabul. One could expect the similar things happening in Panjshir, where the Tajiks could be discriminated against for standing up, or the national resistance for standing up to the Taliban. Now, that is what is a cause of concern. That's a cause of worry, and one sees that in the minorities in Afghanistan, the women in Afghanistan, equal opportunities is a very big question. They've allowed girls to go to universities, and the universities have reopened, but we've seen visuals about, curtains being drawn and separate Zanana passages being enforced. Now, or that video that emerged yesterday where the Taliban was lashing a woman for crossing the road during traffic or being alone, so out in the open. So these are concerns which loom large in the Afghan society. Priti?
All right, Amrit, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining in with those inputs. That was our correspondent Amrit Pal Singh joining us and talking more about the current situation in Afghanistan and what is to be expected ahead. Up next, we're heading for a short break. Stay with us. You're watching News on the Hour.
Namaste India.
Namaste land.
Marhaban ila al-Hind.
Zari India. Ni hao.
Salam India.
Namaste India.
Namaskar Bharata.
Muy
India.
Nahnu hunud.
India. Ma Hindi hasti. Hindiani.
Salam Hindustan.
We are India.
Your window to rising India. India's voice on global platforms. Latest news from India and around the world. In-depth analysis of global headlines. Watch DD India in your country. Available for downlink in all Southeast Asian countries. STTV broadcast is available through the satellite GSAT 17 at 93.5 degrees east. HDTV broadcast is available through the satellite GSAT 10 at 83 degrees east. For technical details, scan here. Switch to DD India now.
Welcome back after the break. In more international news, rebellious forces from the Tigray region killed 120 civilians over 2 days in a village in Ethiopia's Amhara region. The killings in Chena village near the town of Dabat took place early this month, according to Sunet Wobalam, the local administrator in Dabat, and Chalachao Dadnew, spokesperson of the nearby city of Gondar. Also, the Tigrayan forces later issued a statement rejecting what they called a fabricated allegation by the Amhara regional government and denying any involvement in the killing of the civilians. It is the first such report of Tigrayan forces killing a large number of civilians since they seized territory in Amhara. Tens of thousands of people have fled their homes in the region as the forces have advanced. Moroccans continued voting on Wednesday in a parliamentary election under the new rules. Moroccan voters have headed to the polls to choose a new parliament and local leaders in elections that have been reshaped by the pandemic amidst widespread disillusionment with the political system. About 18 million people were expected to cast their ballots on Wednesday, the third time since a new constitution was introduced in the 2011 February 20th movement, the local version of the Arab Spring. Morocco had turnout in Wednesday's parliamentary election was just over 50%, higher than in 2016 after authorities combined it with local elections that traditionally draw better participation. Morocco is a constitutional monarchy where the king holds sweeping powers. He picks the prime minister from the party that wins the most seats in parliament and appoints key ministers. Norway will go to polls this weekend after a national election campaign dominated by climate change and a widening wealth gap. Opinion polls show the opposition Labour Party on course to replace the governing Conservatives coalition of Erna Solberg. However, Labour might have to seek support from two or more other parties to secure a parliamentary majority. The man projected to become Prime Minister after the September 12th ballot, Labour leader Jonas Støre has pledged to address inequality by offering tax relief to low and middle income families and hiking rates for the rich.
Equal rights and equal opportunity have to be secured in a country that is used to small levels of inequity, but where that has been increasing over the last years. So more fair distribution is a foundational policy, and that change will be felt. Well, the biggest challenge for Norway is to get people to work, qualify for work, get young people through education. I think that's a foundation, very important in the confronting digitalization, technological transition. And then I would really argue that we have 9 years to achieve 2030 goals in meeting the Paris objectives. So we will cut 55% of our emissions. That's a huge transition. So we have to really get going during these first 4 years and do that in a tangible way.
Hundreds gathered in Madrid to demand better protections for LGBT rights and vent their fury at a series of suspected homophobic attacks that have rocked Spain in recent months. The protest on Wednesday was called after a 20-year-old Spanish man asked a masked gang assaulted him. Homophobic aggressions have been in the spotlight in Spain after the killing of a nursing assistant who was beaten to death in the northwestern region of Galicia in July, allegedly because of his sexual orientation. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez is expected to chair an urgent meeting of Spain's Commission Against Hate Crimes tomorrow. North Korea held a nighttime military parade. However, it does not appear to have shown off any ballistic missiles or other advanced weaponry. The North held the parade after midnight to mark the 73rd anniversary of the country's national founding. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un attended the parade, and the parade featured small artillery, fire trucks and rows of individuals wearing what were described as domestically produced orange hazmat suits, complete with hoods and gas masks. Also, the last North Korean military parade was held in January when it unveiled a new submarine-launched ballistic missile. North Korea often holds parades on major political anniversaries, both to demonstrate its latest military developments and also to bolster domestic solidarity. Up next, a quick look at the COVID figures from across the world. When we talk of the situation, then over 22.34 crore people have contracted the virus so far, while more than 19 crore 99 lakh patients have recovered from it. The deadly virus has claimed lives of over 46,10,000 people globally. The US has been witnessing a resurge in the new COVID cases due to the Delta variant of the virus. More than 4 crore 13 lakh cases and over 6,71,000 deaths have been reported in the country. In Australia, Sydney, cafes, restaurants and pubs are all set to reopen in the second half of October after months of strict COVID lockdown, according to an exit roadmap published by New South Wales state officials. Officials have said that bars and eateries as well as gyms across the city of 5 million people will be able to reopen at reduced capacity within days of the state reaching a 70% double vaccination target, which is expected around mid-October. Now, stay-at-home orders for the fully vaccinated will be lifted on Monday after the target is achieved. The plan to ease the lockdown comes as daily infections linger near record levels in New South Wales amidst the spread of the highly transmissible Delta variant, with the state registering 1,405 new local cases on Thursday, down from 1,480 a day earlier. 5 new deaths were recorded. In Cuba, Cuban worshippers of Our Lady of Charity honored the country's patron saint on Wednesday, using the event to pray for health, peace and relief from a crippling economic crisis. Faithful asked the Virgin of Regla and Our Lady of Charity for the end of COVID-19 pandemic, with the Caribbean country struggling with one of the highest rates in the world in terms of cases per 100,000 inhabitants. Catholic and non-Catholic Cubans have revered Our Lady of Charity since she was declared the patroness of Cuba by Pope Benedict XV in 1916. Earlier this week, worshippers prayed to the Virgin of Regla for an end to the COVID pandemic as cases and deaths skyrocket in the Caribbean country. On September 7th each year, many Cubans pray to the Virgin of Regla, which is syncretized with the Orisha Yemaya in Santeria, an African diasporic religion that developed in Cuba. On to some news from the world of business now. US stocks edged lower in early trading on Wednesday as investors remained on the sidelines. Wall Street ended lower, spooked by worries that the Delta variant of the virus could blunt the economy's recovery and on uncertainty about when the Fed Reserve may pull back its accommodative policies. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 0.2% to end at 35,029.19. while the S&P 500 lost 0.13% to 4,514. The Nasdaq Composite dropped 0.57% to 15,286.68. The Indian market opened in the red following the mixed global cues. The benchmark BSE Sensex opened at 58,184, down by 65.62 points. On the other hand, broader Nifty was down by 20.55 points at 17,332. All right, on to sports now. India have named a 15-man squad for the upcoming T20 World Cup in the UAE and Oman. Virat Kohli will lead the side with Rohit Sharma as his vice-captain. The tournament will get underway from October 17th, with the final to be played in Dubai on November 14th. Spinner Ravichandran Ashwin is included for his first international T20 call-up in 4 years, despite not playing in any of India's tests against England so far this summer. Former Indian captain MS Dhoni will act as the team's mentor for the tournament. The squad includes Virat Kohli as captain, Rohit Sharma as vice-captain. Other players are KL Rahul, Surya Kumar Yadav, Rishabh Pant, Hardik Pandya, R. Ashwin, Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, Rahul Chahar, Varun, Mohammad Shami, Akshar Patel, Jasprit Bumrah, Ravindra Jadeja and Ishan Kishan. In the US Open, British teenager Emma Raducanu became the first qualifier to reach the US Open semi-finals, defeating Olympic champion Belinda Bencic 6-3, 6-4. Victory means that she will rise to the cusp of the world's top 50 and become the British women's #1. She will play Maria Sakkari in today's semis after the Greek beat Czech 4th seed Karolina Pliskova. That was about women's singles. In men's singles, Olympic champion Alexander Zverev moved into the US Open semi-final with a straight set victory over South African Lloyd Harris. German 4-seed Zverev, 24 years of age, won 7-6, 6-3, 6-4 in just over 2 hours. He could face world number 1 Novak Djokovic in the semi-finals. And moving on, Atletico Madrid forward Antoine Griezmann met his teammates before his first training session on his return to Atletico. It is not yet confirmed when the French player will be unveiled as an Atletico player. On the last day of the transfer window, Atletico announced that they had re-signed Griezmann on a season-long loan from Barcelona with the option to make it a 2-season deal. In one of the most eye-catching moves on Europe's deadline day, Atletico secured the return of a player they sold for a reported 120 million euros in 2019. Brazil's soccer coach has defended the measure taken by Brazilian health officials to disrupt the World Cup qualifier match with Argentina amid a COVID dispute. On Sunday, Brazilian health authorities invaded the pitch to stop the game after accusing 4 of Argentina's English Premier League players of violating the country's COVID quarantine rules. Brazilian players hit the training field at home on Wednesday, preparing for a World Cup qualifier match against Peru. And back home, Prime Minister Narendra Modi met the Indian Paralympic champions who participated in the 2020 Tokyo Paralympics and also made the country proud on the world stage. And here are some exclusive pictures from their meeting. The Prime Minister met the Indian Paralympic champions who participated in the 2020 Tokyo Paralympics. And these are the visuals. Pictures, in fact, taken during the meet. The Prime Minister also met the Olympians who made the country proud on their return back to the country. And here we have Prime Minister interacting with the Paralympians who returned back. This was for the first time that India sent the largest ever contingent both in Tokyo Olympics and also Tokyo Paralympics. And the biggest medal haul has been witnessed in both Olympics and Paralympics this time around. All right, that's it in this edition of News on the Hour this morning. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Your window to rising India.